All right, so you ready to have a little fun?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting.
So this is our review of the Netflix film Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire,
Yes.
written, directed, and produced by the one and only Zack Snyder.
Snyder.
I have come up with an equation for Zack Snyder now.
Yes.
It's half Uwe Boll and half Michael Bay put together. Because when I watched this movie, I was getting vibes from both of those directors.
I won't lie to you. While I disagree about Uwe Boll, I did think immediately at the beginning of this movie of, what's it called? Under Siege Tale or whatever.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like a King's Tale or
King's
something
Tale.
like that.
Yeah, whatever it's
No,
fucking
if
called.
you go back, and it's what it is Uwe Boll had this way of getting these massive stars to be in these movies and give the worst dialogue and the worst acting of their entire careers.
In the Name of the King.
In the Name of the King, thank you. And in this movie, I'm watching people like Jimon Hunsu and Sophia Boutella, names Charlie Hunnam, Anthony Hopkins, who's only voice work. But
I thought that was him.
But these are like big name people, and the dialogue and acting is so fucking bad. I mean, we're not even going to talk about. I'm going to let you kick off the 1,000% blatant ripoff of Star Wars.
Is this Star Wars? This is off-brand Star Wars. I went through all these.
Unbelievable.
And I picked up some Magic Treasure cereal that's definitely not Lucky Charms. And I picked up some fucking duplex cookies that are definitely not Oreos.
So you're saying this is the Costco Star Wars?
And I picked up some Rebel Moon, which is distinctly different from Star Wars.
Dude.
Okay.
How blatant.
I'm going to say this. I didn't hate this movie.
Oh, I hated this movie.
I generally give this movie a B minus. I don't want to overscore it. It does have some serious problems. We're gonna get to the third act because oh my god, that third act it's full of decisions.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for Magnificent Seven storylines, and this is big Magnificent Seven energy, and they go around, they have to find these warriors to protect these farmers against this one evil that they definitely can't take on, and so there's no real reward, but you're gonna help these farmers, and it's like that's literally the plot of Magnificent Seven. And I like Sophia Boutella. I really, really wanted to like her character. Her character was kind of stuck in neutral for the first 20 minutes of the movie. And I like the creature design. I like the look of some of this movie.
That's the part that this is a big Zack Snyder thing. Some of the CGI, like the robot.
The robot.
So well done.
The griffin.
But then some is so bad. Like the green screening in a lot of parts is horrible.
Yeah. No, there were definitely moments where I was like,
even the first shot of her working the field with the Jupiter-like moon behind her, it's like, that looks terrible. I mean, they're on a moon, and that's the planet, but it's like, that looks so bad.
Yeah. Well, and we started talking a little bit about color correction. I had to change the settings on my TV because I could not see anyone's faces. Like, I don't know what 90% of this movie looks like without the color grading change that I put in, because I literally could not watch the movie with the color settings as they were. It was making me so crazy to be like, man, I can't see anything in this room. Oh, shit, I can't see anything outside either. I hope that I'm not supposed to be picking up on complex emotions on characters' faces because I can't see any of them. And it just, guys, directors, we can't watch your movie if you color grade it so drastically. Like, you look at 300. 300 has drastic color changing, right? The color grading on 300 is its own goddamn thing because they're trying to make it look. But you can still see what's fucking happening.
Yes.
And they use contrast to make it so that even if you really want those deep, dark shadows, you can still see what's happening. Here, for the love of God, I could not find a way to see what people's faces were, what their expressions were, and there's a lot of that. You
couldn't see MODOK's face?
I was gonna when he showed up and the giant Nazi ship is hanging overhead, I was like, God. What are you gonna do, Corey? What's your plan, Corey? What are we gonna do? God. What are we gonna do about this?
See, I going on the color correction thing, I'm 100% behind you, and I'll tell you why. Yesterday when I got home from work, the family was at a party that I didn't get out of work in time, so they weren't going to be home for a couple hours. So before I watched this, I had a little herbal help getting
some
relaxed
good
after
ideas.
work. And it freaked me the fuck out, some of these scenes. I'm like, what the? Like, are my eyes... Like, I didn't have my contacts in anymore, but I felt like there was something wrong. I was like, what is... You're right, man. The color, like, I understand you want something to be colorful and beautiful.
You want to have it be dynamic and, like, you want that saturation. But when you saturate all the colors, you saturate the black. And when you saturate the black to a certain level, you can't make out any distinctive sharp edges. But here's the thing. I was thinking about it just now. This is also indicative of a lot of the characters in this movie.
Yes.
Where there's a lot of characters where the color grading is just wrong. And you just can't get anything out of the character because you're just like, I can't see them. The prince that we meet, who's definitely not Conan the Barbarian.
No.
He's somehow not, even though he looks just like Momoa's Conan the Barbarian. I like his stuff. I like his scene. I like the morality of a lot of these characters. I don't know anything about them. Mm-hmm. We find out he's been locked up, Anakin Skywalker style, and he's just working off some anonymous debt, and we're told that he failed someone, and so he has this big debt over his name, and now he's, he frees this beast, and he flies it around, and that scene was pretty good. I like that scene. I like the creature design of that scene, so that kind of carried everything off. God help me, I don't know anything about this guy. Besides, I know more about his abs than I know about his personality. You get Gunnar at the beginning, who's kind of the audience surrogate. He's just like the everyman. So he's the one that like saves them at the end because all these heroes still need to be saved by the everyman.
But it's like, God damn it, man. Can't you make a movie that makes just the people look dirty? It's like they're so well manicured and clean.
Well, it's even part
beautiful.
of the plot. Even like in the plot itself, the Nazis show up, and Francis from Deadpool.
Ed Skrein, which why give him that fucking haircut?
Why
give him the mo?
The whole of his character design I did not like.
You didn't like the octopus that was sucking him off in that one scene?
That was weird. I didn't mind that.
I don't even know what that was about.
I can only imagine. I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going.
Yeah.
But like you know what I really hated? Was his tie that went into his belt buckle. I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it so much. I saw it. No one else in this entire movie has worn a tie. No one else at any point. None of the officers, none of the higher-ups, not in any of the flashbacks. Never has anyone wore a tie. Why in God's green earth does Francis suddenly look like he works out of the 1950s in a madman office? Like, it just made me so mad. Like, very irrationally angry. I hated it.
It was, his character was not.
And I just, like, we get to the end, and he's still not dead, and you have all this bullshit malarkey with Korras, not Kara.
Korras.
Because there's a million Korras and there's a million Karas. Yeah. Man, if you have a science fiction or fantasy thing, you better name your main character Korra, because I can't tell you how many fucking Korras and Karas there are in science fiction fantasy stories.
Way too many.
So many. Anyway, you have her adoptive father, who we find out extremely little about. There's an info dump of all info dumps, and we still find out almost nothing.
And here's the thing now. This is okay. So I want to start. I want to go off of what you just said by going to the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
Skip the whole part where they showed the big ship slowly going by the screen, and Anthony Hopkins' voiceover was a scroll. So that was like 100%
it was a scroll.
Star Wars.
I've seen that done much better.
That in opening part with the introduction of Korra and the whole group, and the over sexualization of like, they're just you need to have sex tonight to make the plants grow.
They kept on doing it too.
Yeah,
they kept on talking about it.
It was uncomfortable.
It was weird.
But now here's the other thing: her adoptive father, because she was the age she is when he found her, pretty much, because you get from the flashback that she was this age, pretty much when he finds her. So he's just a lonely old guy that finds this attractive woman, brings her back to the house, and then when she closes her little drapes and starts taking her clothes off, I'm like, what is going on here?
The least effective drapes you've ever seen.
No, yes! Like, it's like, maybe if it was like a Superman thing and he found her when she was a kid, but you're like, no, he found her like a week ago.
Yeah.
And he's alone and he's a dude and all they do is talk about fucking. And then she's going to start taking her clothes off with no drink. I was like, what? I was so like, I have no idea what the fuck is going on in this.
Well, like, I was just thrown off from Corey at the feast being like, we need to make a sacrifice for the grain to grow. Everybody fuck! Yes! Find a partner and fuck! And I was like, okay, this is pretty bold. And then we get deeper into the story and Cora's telling us about her history. And she's like, yeah, I joined the army. And the army was like, everybody fuck! Find a partner and fuck!
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, this is interesting, and I can kind of see, I like this argument that they know that at some point imperialism isn't going to be enough of a driving factor, so now you have to have skin in the game. The best way to have that is to have a relationship with somebody you see every day. So now they're saying, like, oh, date coworkers because that's going to make you care when you don't care. It's still really weird to have so many sex... I mean, like, I'm sex positive, but it's really weird to have the father of the village say, everybody fuck!
It should have been called Rebel Moon Part 1, Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes Wide Shut.
It was like... And that was jarring to me, that whole opening part. 'Cause I'm like, I feel really uncomfortable with what's going on, especially with the father figure and her getting nude. Like, you only see her unbuttoning the top, but you know what's coming.
Yeah.
And you're like... Then even he kind of mentioned, like, why aren't you with this guy right now?
You should be out there partying.
Fucking. And it's like, you know what he means when he said you should be out there partying. It's like, why aren't you horizontal right now?
Well, and they set up that there's this hunter that she may or may not be interested in. She's not really sure. That hunter means nothing in the entire plot.
Nothing.
He goes away, and we never hear from him ever again. Because instead we got Gunner, who's kind of like the, I got a plan, and then it blows up in his face.
Yeah.
But like I was talking about before with the color grading, I don't know anything about Gunner. You know, we have this whole moment where he's looking out at Cora plowing her field. Yeah. And then he goes and talks to her about this guy that has a crush on her. And I'm just sitting here like, is this her brother? Are they friends?
I agree 1,000%. And the longing looks that not only he had looking at her, but then when she's going back and forth between the two of them at the feast. And you're like, what is going on?
Well, she gives some of the same looks to Sam, the girl that's almost raped by the army guys.
That's true, too.
And I'm just like, so what is going on?
And then when the robot is telling Sam the story, it's like, is she the princess?
Well, and like, the whole robot thing threw me off because I thought the robot was going to be a character. No, the robot's not a character.
He runs off.
And he gets a flower crown. Yeah. He saves the day. He runs away. And then he comes at the very end, like the last shot of the movie on the planet is him with these weird antlers he's crafted out of sticks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the I know you guys have a part 2, but this, you guys gotta do better than this. Come on, this makes no fucking sense. Why did we spend all this time with this robot, who is clearly important to some plot, who is not in any way important to this plot? Yeah. Like, what is happening that we have all of these interactions? The other character I had that with was the good cadet. Arise or Ares or whatever his name was, the good one that fights by her side. I was like, oh, so he's going to be... No! What happens to him when all the other army guys are killed on the planet? Does the village take him in? We don't know, because we're literally never shown anything. Yeah. And I was just like, what the fuck is going on? You know why that happened? Because usually those kind of things would happen in the third act of a movie, but the third act didn't happen in this movie.
Not at all.
This movie has a big fight scene that kind of stands in place of the third act, and then nothing else, to the point where the characters are openly commenting about how there's no third act to this fucking story. And I get it. There's a part 2. But I'm going to tell you the same thing I told Marvel when they did Homecoming. That's not an excuse for bad storytelling. Yeah. You can't be like, we're going to get to it later. No. You need to do more than that. You need to do more than introduce and spend a lot of time on this concept and then just fully dump it, but then bring it back at the end and be like, you remember that robot? You remember that robot you think was going to be important? It's not, but maybe he will be in the next one. Why the fuck did we meet him in this one then? What the fuck was the point of this?
And like the whole Belisarius breaking a hippogriff for the guy so he could get his freedom. I was like, he got buck beat to let him ride him. That's pretty much what he did. He knelt and showed it's like it was like watching Harry get butt beat to ride him. I'm like, what the fuck, dude?
I like that scene because like he has the whole moment where he's like, nobody understands either of us, and he's speaking in his home language instead of English, and like I like those moments. I like him, quote unquote, breaking the hippogriff. But like,
see, what
by the end of the movie, it meant nothing.
What I didn't like about that, it's the guy that owns him is pretty much like, if he could just break him, I'll let him go. And then he gets him to let him ride him. And instead of saying, as soon as I ride him and know he's like, no, just fucking go.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the thing fucking kills him. And you're like,
wow, shocking.
that was the dumbest fucking, like, I think that's the thing about this movie. It made me mad.
Yeah.
Because it was so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
In so many spots. And it's honestly the thing that I've seen a lot with Zack Snyder now. I'll watch his movies and I'm like, you don't need slow motion. I mean, I understand. That's your lens flare.
That's his bread and butter.
Yeah, that's your J.J. Abrams lens flare. But fuck, it's annoying when you use it way too much.
When he uses it well, and it's shot well, there's one scene where I think it's part of the flashback, and he has some slow-mo in that scene where she's storming the gate, and there's bullets flying past her.
It kind of looked like Gears of War, where she's like hiding behind the thing.
I like that. I like that use of it, but I agree. There were moments, especially towards the end, where when Blood Axe is running up the crane, it looked like he was running in sand.
Yeah.
He did. It had no motion. It had no momentum.
Yes.
Had no feeling of urgency. It looked like he was just running on a treadmill. And I was just like, I don't think this looks the way you want it to look,
and
my
in
dude.
fact, I just saw that scene last year in Dungeons and Dragons when he was jumping at the dragon. It almost looked identical as far as like the way they had him with the spear and the shot and everything. I was like, fuck, you really gonna fucking do this?
And it's like, it's tough because I like a lot of the design elements of this. I love the lasers. I thought the melting lasers were so cool.
Yes, that was
where
cool.
They aren't like a standard laser beam. It's more like you're just firing a pellet of lava. I was like, all right, I like this a lot. This is really cool. The stuff with the army guys being left behind, and you have kind of this dichotomy of the two sides. I was like, okay, this is really interesting. I kind of like this. The weird scorpion holding devices that they have that paralyze people. I was like, okay, I like this. This is cool. The bridge for Charlie Hunnam's ship I thought was cool, that everybody kind of stands on the bridge instead of sitting. I was like, all right, I like this. This doesn't look like a million other sci-fi things. But then you get to the story and you're like, but this literally means nothing.
Yeah, no, it's so fucking
like
bad.
Nothing happens of subs. I mean, like, it does and it doesn't, because it kind of all happens out of order in a weird way, where you have the inciting incident, you have the refusal of the call, she finally decides to get involved, you have this pretty good fight scene, and then they leave the planet, and a lot of the characters we thought were going to be important, they're gone. They will never come back. So now it becomes this Magnificent Seven story of, we got to find these rebels, but we're also going to try and recruit a bunch of people. And I like the Japanese swordswoman against the spider monster.
Except her intro, though.
Yeah.
It's like,
that was weird, where they're in
she
the
has
elevator.
lightsabers, and you're not going to use them for the majority of the fight, and then all of a sudden at the end, for dramatic effect, zap them up, and you end the fight in 2 seconds.
And she also has robot hands, and it's like none of this has gone into. And you're just like, I feel like somehow we're spending a lot of time on nothing.
Yes.
Like, there's obviously stuff going on, and I feel like we get into some of it, but I feel like we only kind of glancingly get into it. We don't actually take apart anything. We don't find out that she had her own children killed in front of her until Francis tells us at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, guys, this is not good storytelling.
No.
And like, I can appreciate this idea where they get ambushed, and it's basically like if Willow ended at the castle instead of the second castle that they go to. It ends at the castle with the trolls, and then there's just no Bed Morta. And you're like, that's weird. Right? It's weird.
Yeah.
It doesn't make
I
any
agree.
fucking sense. And I can appreciate this idea of like, oh, we blew up the big dreadnought that was hovering over the planet. That was a problem. And Ed Skeen is now maybe dead, maybe not. And we're just going to pack up and go and pay our guys in grain, I guess, because I guess everything worked out. And the characters are even walking on the moon, and they're like, man, this would have been a good place to die. They're like taking off plot armor. And like, man, this would have been a good place to die. And I'm like, So you know there should be a third act.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
everybody, we all know there should be a third act, and there's just not.
Yeah.
And it was just strange because it felt like it took its time with a lot of good stuff. I don't love an exposition dump, but I thought the flashback was done about as well as you could do something like that. I think that there's a better way to introduce all those nodes into the story than just doing a giant expedition dump over fire. But like, I didn't mind it. It was okay. I can get past it. I've seen more egregious. Man, you guys gotta not just dump out at the end.
I give this movie a D. Reason I give it a D is I agree some of the visuals are stunning, but a lot are not. And the story is so bad and the acting is so bad. And the story is not only bad, but it's so blatantly picked from multiple films and franchises.
Oh, yeah. This has big Star Wars energy right down to it's fantasy until it's a Western.
Well, the father-daughter with her getting abducted is Thanos and Gamora.
Yeah.
She gets abducted by Thanos. He turns her into Gamora, and then she goes against him, and then is going to have to fight him in the final scene.
We don't even see it. Like, of all these things,
we don't see her getting away.
Yeah, of all the things in this flashback that were walked through with like Ocarina of Time, just kind of like taking your hand and walking you through the plot, they don't actually show her sin.
Yeah.
Like, what has caused her to go into hiding. They tell us what it is.
They tell you it's because she saw
because she was supposed to take care of the princess, and the princess died, and then the king and queen died,
yes,
and everybody blames her. Okay, but we don't see any of that.
Yes,
We're just told it. Yes. And I'm like, there's this weird rule in cinema called show don't tell.
Yes.
And I just feel like you're showing us a lot and not telling us enough of anything. And then the movie just kind of ends, and I'm just left being like, so I guess all of this will be resolved in part 2? I don't know. This doesn't feel satisfactory in any way.
And it has gotten to the point now where it is so obvious that when a movie of this scale goes directly to Netflix, it's because they know in the theater it will bomb like John Carter. And when I was watching this, I was like, there's no way this movie would have made a fucking cent in the theater. It would have had like a good opening weekend and then just bombed.
And then nobody would have seen it again after that.
Because it really, like, the writing... Zack Snyder has got to stop writing his movies.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
If he wants to direct visuals, you know, the slow motion, once again, too heavy-handed, dude. Like you said, there are good uses of it, and then right after the good use, it's followed up by a bad use.
Yeah.
Like, almost right away, and you're like, fuck, dude. You know, the whole movie would have been done in 2 hours instead of 2.5 hours because of fucking slow motion.
I will say, this isn't as egregious as 300, where 300 is literally half the movie is in slow motion. A fun fact, if you take all the sections of 300 and you play them at full speed, I think the whole movie is, I want to say, like 55, 60 minutes. It's not long.
I believe it.
So this didn't have that level, but it had enough that this took a movie that should have been an hour and a half long and turned it into a 2.5 hour long movie, which still somehow didn't satisfy
not even
on
close.
A bunch of levels. And it just... Man, I didn't come into this being like, oh, I don't want to watch Rebel Moon. It's a Star Wars ripoff. I came in being like, let's see what you got, right? Because, I love Indiana Jones and I love The Rocketeer. One's a blatant ripoff of the other, and I don't care. It's fine. I will take it. It is good enough, and he has a cool enough coat and a rad fucking helmet, and I will take it. This, I came in, I was like, show me what you got. Be better than Shane. Like that's my level. Don't be Shane.
Yeah.
Don't have a character like Joey, who I remember all these years later. I haven't seen Shane in over 15 years. I still remember Joey because I fucking hate him. I fucking hate Joey. Joey fucking sucks. All right? And... Man, I don't like to disparage anything that comes from Gene Arthur, but god damn it, your son is terrible.
Yeah.
I look at this movie and I was like, I want to see what you have, and that's why I like the production design and the style and the feel of it. I like the costumes. I like the look of the whole thing. When I can see it, I still had to change the whole color grading. Like, let's not take that off the table. I changed how the movie fundamentally looks so I could watch it in a more pleasurable sense. You can't just deliver a third of a story and say, we'll be back for part 2.
Yeah.
And have that be like, oh, that's why all this shit doesn't make sense because there's going to be a part 2. That's not an excuse.
No.
Listen, when you get to the end of Empire Strikes Back, do you feel like it's a satisfactory ending with another adventure coming? Or do you feel like there's still a shit ton of loose ends that you don't fucking know anything about how they're going to come down? Yeah. Because they were literally thrown up in the air and then the juggler ran off stage. Yeah. You're just like, this is not a show. This is not a show. I want to like it because it looks cool and it feels cool and the acting is, for the most part, pretty good. Man, the writing and the directing, it just doesn't go anywhere.
No, it's so bad. And it's the sad, like, this is a good example of what this type of storytelling is nowadays.
Yeah.
Sci-fi, fantasy, unfortunately, unless you're getting some solid animated ones, are this flashy, let's be and that's kind of what I liked about Dungeons and Dragons a lot, is you were a little more invested in the characters. But this, it's just like, how much flash can we throw at the screen? And we're just going to take bits and pieces, because I went into it looking for the Star Wars references, which slap you in the face pretty hard.
Oh, yeah.
But then it's the references from other films that I kind of caught me off guard, where I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, there's barely anything unique about this. Especially after the cantina scene. I was like...
They had a full cantina scene.
They had a full fucking cantina scene.
Cantina
scene.
I
was just like, Jesus
Which, like, I like parts of this movie. One of my favorite things to do is kind of talk back to characters as things are happening and pretend I'm part of the scene and kind of, like, get into the movie that way. And I got a lot of good moments like that. Just, like, I don't mind that it tried to be Star Wars. I mind that it didn't tell a good story.
No.
Star Wars, for as basic a story as it is still a good story. Mm-hmm. You know, the movie doesn't end when they leave the Death Star. There's a whole other thing that happens after that. And this movie ended after they leave the Death Star.
Yeah. See, and I think this is an example of the negativity of putting a film like this on Netflix, is if it was a direct-to-theater film, it would had to have had a better finale to ensure a part 2.
Yeah.
Where this, I believe it was just sold as 2 parts.
Yeah.
And Netflix is like, here's the money, make your 2 parts. So he didn't have to have that satisfying ending, because he could be like, we're making a second one anyways. Like, it'll fucking stream 20 million in the opening weekend or something like that, so people will see it, regardless if they like it or not.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Adam Sandler movies.
Well, and it's like Netflix, because everything on Netflix is kind of the mainstream. Yeah. When it comes to streaming services, Netflix is like the one that everybody knows and is comfortable with. It's the Facebook of streaming services.
Pretty much.
So you know that it's going to get clout, and it's going to get toys, and it's going to get attention, and it's going to get trailers, and it's going to get flash. It almost, to me, seems like Zack Snyder went in to Netflix and said, okay, you know the Snyder Cut? I'm doing that, but with my own sci-fi fantasy series. So imagine my version of Star Wars done like the Snyder Cut. And Netflix was like, okay, is it going to be 5.5 hours long? And Zack Snyder was like, yeah, that's my plan. Netflix was like, can we cut it in half? Sure. You cut it in half, but these are not equal parts, my dude.
No. And like, I want to say Army of the Dead did really well as far as streaming numbers. That was a shit movie. And it's like, that's the proof is in the pudding right there. That's the problem with these, is you don't need to necessarily have a cohesive story as long as it's flashy enough to get eyeballs on the screen.
Exactly.
And that's the worst part. It's like, God damn it. Because I did go into this knowing all of the feedback that went into, you know, the negativity about it being like Star Wars 2.0 and all that. I went into it wanting to like it, because there hasn't been a sci-fi film like this that has really nailed it in a while.
Oh, I agree.
And I definitely wanted to see this, and it was, God, it was such a fucking letdown.
Especially like a sci-fi fantasy. Like, there's only one movie where you can sit down with people and argue, is this a science fiction movie or is this a fantasy movie? And it's Star Wars, and the answer is fantasy. Because if you take all the commiserate parts, the tropes from fantasy are about double the tropes from science fiction. It's fantasy in space.
Yes.
If you phrase it like that, then all the stuff that you consider science fiction suddenly becomes part of in space, and the rest is just a fantasy story. This has a lot of those elements, right down to a farmer having to escape from a Nazi-like regime, who are...
A senator took over power of it
and
became the leader, and you're like, Jesus Christ, just fucking call it.
And it's just like, okay, all right, this has a lot of the same feel. I like the look. It has lightsabers, but kind of as an afterthought. Most people use guns. Okay, this is interesting. this story goes nowhere. It's stuck in neutral the entire time. And I'm just sitting there like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Because I love Magnificent Seven as a storyline. I love it as a concept. The idea of finding a bunch of wayward heroes who aren't doing anything right now, but are good and honorable enough to step up and say, I can help in this situation. Let me help in this situation. I love that fucking story. And it just means nothing by the end of this movie.
And I have it up on my tablet right now, and they keep replaying like scenes from the movie. And as I'm watching it, and I'm seeing like the actors, and it made me remember there was something I saw this week where they were discussing the negatives between digital cinema and film, to where digital just looks too clean and it looks too perfect. And I'm looking at especially the male actors, and it made me think about the good sci-fi in the past, like Aliens. The Space Marines weren't jacked. They were, muscular, but they weren't ripped. And they look dirty, and they look normal, and that's believable. And I'm looking at these guys that look like they stepped out of a GQ magazine without a speck of dirt, a little bit of water, not even sweat. Their hair looks amazing.
They just got out of the tanning bed.
They're completely ripped, exactly. Their abs they have a 12-pack. And it's like, I think that's another thing that I'm getting kind of tired of. It's like, you don't need them to be jacked. You just need them to look like dudes.
I mean, Conan the Barbarian didn't even wear a shirt. He just had like this shawl that he would throw over his shoulders every once in a while. Also, going back to what I've heard about from Henry Cavill and others, that dude must have been so dehydrated for every scene he was in. Because that's how you get that level of muscle definition, is you don't drink water for like 18 hours.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, look how my muscles look. And it's like, man, you must have been feeling like shit the entire time you were filming this movie.
Out in like a desert area. Dehydrated.
And no shirt, so when it is cold or windy, you don't have anything to put on. I don't hate this movie, but I can't give it a passing grade because it's just not good enough. I give it a passing grade in the sense of like, I like a lot of the commiserate pieces, but the whole of it is like a C+, B-. When the second part comes out, it might get better. I'm also not going to grade it that that's its own thing. That can't be, the salve to this one. Is like, man, if you didn't like this one, wait till the second one, and then that's going to fix all the problems from the first one. That's what people said about Homecoming when I was like, he's not web swinging. They're like, he'll do it later. That's not an answer for him not web swinging here.
Well, I'm glad we pushed the crisis to this, so these two movies are together because they have the same problem.
The same exact problem. I was thinking about that coming into the show of just like both of these movies carry you through and you're always like, okay, where's this going? Where's this going? Where's this going? And then they just end and they say, come back for part 2. Yeah. And you're like, that's not an ending.
I'm going to be honest. I was kind of before this done with Zack Snyder, but now I'm officially done with Zack Snyder. Like, I've never been a massive fan of his. The only movie of his that I could say I really love is Watchmen, especially the director's cut. There are movies that I've liked, and then most of them I didn't like. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I actually didn't like 300 because I thought it was just fucking goofy.
I like 300 in part because it's goofy, but also it's a good action movie. The action sequences are really dynamic.
See, it is, except for the slow motion. I think that's the thing that gets me. I'm not a big fan of slow motion.
See, the slow motion to me makes every hit harder in 300. I'm thinking of that scene where a guy just runs full speed into a shield and bounces off, and you see him bounce off in slow motion. And it's just like you have a harder sense of everything. Everything feels more dynamic. But this movie felt more like Sucker Punch than it did 300.
Yeah, that's true.
Like there's so many Zack Snyder movies that if you go back and you're like, ooh, ugh, oof. Oh, that was bad. That's not great. And this is just it's just not there.
No.
It's not bad, and it arguably if you watched it with just music in the background, it'd be a really interesting and dynamic watch. But I still don't think that's even going to solve the problem of the end of the movie.
Why don't we grade this in Siskel and Ebert talk? Because I can't tell if you're a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
I can't tell if I'm a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
I'm a deep thumbs down. Like, I am thumbs in the dirt. So I can't tell if you're a sideways thumb.
I think I'm sideways on this because like it's right at that line. If a C+ is a passing grade, this is a C+, maybe a B- because I really do like the creature effects. But it's weighed down by so many issues that I can't give it anything over a B-. Even a B- feels like a stretch. Hey, this is Alfred the editor coming to you from Beyond the Veil. I realized literally as we finished shooting this that I did have a grade for this. It's I for incomplete. It's what this movie is. It's incomplete. And that's not a good grade, but maybe they'll make it up next semester. We were to grade it on the Jeremy John scale. Where would this be? More fun with alcohol. I think that would be.
I don't know. I had more fun with the
that's
slight
true.
inebriation, and I did not have fun with the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
It just freaked me out. Okay, so that was our episode, folks. We really hope you enjoyed it. Episode 126 is in the books. Once again, we are going to be working on a website. Hopefully, we'll have it up in a couple weeks. You'll be able to get a little more information on us. If you want to know more about the show, though, please go back and listen to past episodes because we really lay it out.
Yeah.
So you can find us Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the podcast sites. And now you can find us on YouTube. So make sure if you wanted to, if you have your phone out and you're watching YouTube, go to NerdPod Generations.
Ring the bell.
Yeah, please ring the bell and subscribe for not only the YouTube, but also for the podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast. We would love to build up a subscriber base.
And if you want to, go to YouTube and comment if you would like us to upload old episodes, because I'll start working on that. I still have the hard files. I can go back.
There are a lot of people that would like to hear our Obi-Wan Kenobi
This
shows.
is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. I can break out. It'll take a lot of work, so I need to know that there's going to be some kind of goal line at the end.
Yes.
But if people want, I will happily go back and edit those so that they are down to 30 to 50 minute long cookie-sized snacks. And in the meantime, you can find me at jetsumstudios.work under the Bronx Division tab. And next week is Groundhog's Day.
Yes.
Yesterday was not Groundhog's Day, no matter what the earth or the government or gods above or below tell you. Yesterday was not Groundhog's Day. Next week is Groundhog's Day. Yes.
And we are going to have a groundhog-themed episode.
I'm actually really excited for this. I'm really excited for this.
But please listen to the show. Check back next week, and hope you have a good one.
Yeah, we'll see you next week, friends and enemies, for some polka.
Yeah!